A half millennium ago, the plants of, quote, the New World presented one of the greatest challenges to the arising Western Academy. The peoples that were being brought over, the, quote, Native Americans, could be explained as lost tribes of Israel. But what about these plants, as the one you see here in our Gateway Garden of New World plants? They're not in the Bible, they're not in the New Testament, they're not in the Apocrypha, they're not in any of the canonical writings of the Academy. As with Galileo's work, they challenged the orthodoxy that there was only one kind of truth. But even today, when you look at something like the Gateway Gardens of New World plants, or all the gardens of North America that had native plants, where are the native peoples? Where are their perspectives? We have these gardens that I call conveniently serene. Next image, please. We're having some technical glitches, so Kirsten and Amy are helping run this. There are a couple of thoughts I want you to take through with this. This is nearly 20 years of work, as Veronica has mentioned. Each one is a step that I've learned related to botanical gardens, specifically mine. The first is you have to understand that the history that even we understand and we present is one of erasure on which we have created our own mythologies. Our curated landscapes usually start with after the removal of the indigenous peoples, even if we put indigenous plants back. We have to have truth-telling about what's here. And in the next several slides, corn, Mnomen, is going to be the storyteller. This mill, just down the road from the botanical gardens, is part of an ecosystem, a cultural landscape ecosystem of corn growing. It's one of the oldest mills in the Midwest. The gardens is one of the sites where undoubtedly the corn was grown. But what about the 2,000 Potawatomi and Wyandot peoples who were in the area at the time of the epidemics and their removal by the United States Army? Next image, please. Gardens are the original colonizing museum. That is our function in the Academy. For the Vatican, gardens come before the Vatican Library as major institutions. Our purpose in Western culture was to take plants from around the world or wherever they were encountered and to reinterpret them in theories of health. That is the foundation of the University of Michigan's Botanic Garden too, in the School of Pharmacy. When the plant people or the Western academics or the priests or whoever encountered another culture and its plants, the plants were brought back, but not necessarily the knowledge system. And we put the plants and the fragments of the knowledge systems into different parts of our emerging universities and museum complexes: anthropology, botany, zoology, the archives. And that today is where you find the information. So the seeds that are here in the University of Michigan Museum of Anthropological Archaeology, probably one of the largest tribal seed collections in North America. I had no knowledge it was even present until a question came from the woman who's wearing a necklace at a meeting after a NAGPRA meeting of were there seeds in the collection? And fortunately, Dr. Lisa Young said, yes, they're in the ethnobotanical collection. A light bulb went off. The Ethnobotanical Museum doesn't grow seeds. The garden knows how to grow seeds, but doesn't even have the knowledge of them, let alone what's in the archives about the information related to them. So there's this entire silencing of the knowledge making of the traditional peoples, the original and contemporary peoples, as we fragment the knowledge into our different museum compartments, and it needs to be brought together under tribal guidance. Next image, please. So out of the question of were there seeds, and are there seeds from Michigan, to which the answer is yes, came a number of discussions. And one was, well, who has responsibility? This is internal to the museum, because The Anishinaabek collections are basically dispersed across almost all of the University of Michigan's museums. But I decided that it was our role at the Botanical Gardens and my role as curator that we are interpreting our landscapes, the homelands of the historic, present, and contemporary and future Anishinaabek peoples, that if we couldn't tell the truth, then what integrity did we have as an institution? Out of this came years of learning how to listen, including, importantly, to silence. It also meant finding partners. And out of this came the understanding that the tribes had to be, the tribal representatives had to be the ones articulating what was important, how do we think about it, and what do we do first. And one of the things in my years of discussions, including with Veronica, our moderator, is that whatever we do everything together. The tribal voices should be first. And one of the things I can do as a privileged university curator is find the funding. So many museums ask tribal partners to do it for free, or to come consult, or to come see us. No, find the funds. But in order to have the conversations to find the funds, go there. Learn how to ask if you can ask a question, because maybe it's presumptuous to even show up and think you have something to contribute. Travel, find the funds to take yourself there, even if it's an 1,800-mile round trip driving in February. Do it. The snow didn't stop anybody before. Part of what we have here, though, is that museological theory doesn't really deal with integrating this back together. We like to talk about interdisciplinarity, but it's more than that. Next image, please. So out of the agency that tribes have inherently from their roles as knowledge keepers and integrators and ones who understand how to put it back together and then how new knowledge as well as old knowledge flows, it's to have relationships. Isn't it fascinating that every Tier 1 university, including the two I've been at here at Michigan and before as a postdoc at Arnold Arboretum of Harvard University, will go through the world and try to help the world, but when it comes to having any kind of relationship with the peoples whose lands our institutions are on, we are often mute. How do we have integrity if we can't restore the relationships of our own place? Question, isn't that hypocrisy? I can't live that. Part of this was learning what it means to be a host in a culture that isn't my own. Part of it was coming up with this construct. I created a term. I call it intercognitive. The knowledge system that I'm trying to understand and be led to work with doesn't map perfectly on my Western trained doctoral, postdoctoral lived experience. I no longer try to map them perfectly. I just call them intercognitive points of contact. But out of this comes the understanding that we can do what the tribes need, which in this case is to grow corns that are either not known anymore in the tribes or are only known by a few. As here, Jacques Desjarlais, the corn shown here, he is the only keeper of it. It is an Anishinaabek traditional corn. He brought it from Red Lake, Minnesota. We found the funding for him to come bring it here, as well as to be present for the harvest, and he regifted it to other tribes. None here. Out of this is the beginning of what I've come to understand is restoration work and the whole idea of social justice in museums as part of what we're doing with our collections. Next image, please. For the protection of the seeds, because they are so rare, and we will this year be working with some out of the museum, which are no longer known in the community of origin, but are perfectly documented from who they came from. The first one is a different case, and it's about restoring wild rice, which was once known on the garden's property. Old records, long before the university owned the property. No one has seen wild rice since it's never been recorded here. Then again, no one had ever seen the cranes until they showed up last year. And I've been working with a graduate student as well as working with a number of tribal rice keepers from across southern Michigan and the Potawatomi peoples, as well as those of elsewhere. And I'd simply want to give you a case study here and a link that you can follow to this, which inherently, because we want to work with an entire wetland system that is extremely public, this will be the first one where we attempt to do truth-telling about the plants and peoples of our site now and moving forward. Next image, please. So it's about legitimacy. I end with this one. What I've learned is you just have to keep at it and keep changing yourself. The first thing to start decolonizing is what's between your two ears. It's not anybody else. And progress will come at the rate of trust. Trust in you, trust in your institution, trust in the future that you might have a humble role in creating. There's a huge paradigm shift underway. I think it's the biggest one since the Renaissance started the museum theories. Even incorporating evolution wasn't as big of a paradigm shift in the natural history world. And this collaborative intercognitive work is going to drive the paradigm shift. And you can either in your own institution, your own career, work with it or not, but it will empower or delay the institution, and it will be the legacy that you live with. Choose your future. This is about humility, it's about respect, it's about renewal, and ultimately, it's about hope. At least 150 colleagues have helped me over the last 20 years come here. I actually keep a spreadsheet. You know, some of us curators are data retentive. And I simply have here a number of the institutions that have helped. A key point from me being viewed as a bizarre curator, even within my own institution, to someone who is working with this in a respected way, was catalytic funding from the Graham Sustainability Institute. It's amazing what finding funds will do. And as I would like to put it, watch the plants. The seeds are finding their way home, and renewal is to begin. Miigwech, thank you.